Well, hello to our preschool and elementary parents and families, and thank you so much for taking time out of your schedule to meet with us and talk with us and get some of your questions answered about all things remote learning, closures next year, all of that. So, what we did is you guys were gracious enough to fill out a survey before the meeting. Again, we've compiled all of those questions based on the theme of what they were asking. And we've got some of my colleagues online with me that are going to go through some of these questions and answer them, as well as the link that was shared out last night that could provide live questions or feedback so we can have a meaningful discussion as we kind of wrap up and head into week 4 of remote learning here. So with that, we're going to start by going through some of the questions, and I'll click to the next slide. And first up to help us is our Director of Curriculum, Erin Green. Erin, if you can take care of the questions that you've got on this slide for us.
Absolutely. Good afternoon. So the first question is asking if there's any way teachers can provide the kids with a list of things that they need to practice for the next grade level during the summer, and asking, will we have access to the tic-tac-toe boards to work on independently over the summer months as to try to avoid the summer slide? Great questions. And the short answer is yes. We will leave the tic-tac-toe boards on. That way, again, you can access them at your own convenience. A lot of the lessons, as you've seen, have teachers that are actually presenting the skill and the content. And I'm sure there are items in the boards that you haven't gotten to, since there's 9 items and you've done 3 on each board. For the most part. As far as list of items or things or skills they need for the next grade level, what the plan is I'm going to put together a list of resources on a website that will be available off of our website. And what I plan to have on those are the current resources the kids will still have access to. So our Lexia program they can use all summer, the RAS Kids, the Think Central, the Go Math, all of that will be left on there. And then as far as the actual grade level skills, I'll put some links as to, what are the important skills for 2nd grade, 3rd grade, and so forth, so that you can kind of, cross-reference those with where you are with your students and your kids. Trying to think if I missed anything there. So again, the software will stay active for your kids over the summer, so they can always log on. Tic-tac-toe boards will be there. And again, in the next few weeks, look for the website that I'm going to put out just to give you some guidance as to, what you might need to work on if you want to try to prepare, if you want to see if your kids are prepared, or you just want to help over the summer so they don't have that summer slide effect. And always, if you need something, feel free to reach out to me directly and I can help you out. Second question is asking if the assignments, the tic-tac-toe boards, could they be posted Sunday by 6 p.m. so that parents can have access to them? We will make our best effort. So we have been posting them Sunday evenings. I don't think it's been before 6 o'clock. I will say that we'll make our best effort. I won't swear to it because there's a lot of work that goes into those. Checking the links and checking the sharing settings and making sure, believe it or not, we do try to do all of this ahead of time, making sure everything's active and working and allows you in and gives you the right access. But we will work really hard between all the grade levels to have that done for you, so they're posted Sunday. That way, as parents suggested, they can print it off and make their schedule for the week. I'm going to jump to number 4. Questions asking, why haven't we explored or tried having online classrooms for elementary kids? We have technology available to conduct at least a class per day per subject. If that's not optional or if that's not feasible, can we look at doing a recorded video of the lessons that students can watch and learn? So I will say that with these most recent round of tic-tac-toe boards and the ones prior, you should have seen teachers presenting. That's been our directive. Now, granted, it's not going to be 20, 30 minutes of the teacher talking because that's just not feasible or practical for a remote setting. But what we have instructed our teachers to do is for any new skill to provide the clarity and the guidance as to how to access how to access the assignment, what those skills need to be, things that they need to know in order to move forward with that skill set. Those are left on the board in a way that students can go back and view that video at any time. What we don't want to do, and I think Dr. Ryba will expand upon this, is we don't want to set up a one-size-fits-all approach where the teacher logs on at a certain time, say 10 o'clock on Mondays, and teaches a lesson, because that provides some inequities with students who may not have availability at that time, or the internet, or have siblings that need to be on and limited bandwidth. So we have gone the route of looking to produce the videos, post the videos, and allow students and parents to log in at their convenience to watch that new skill set. I'm going to turn it over to Dr. Ryba to address anything on that point that I may have missed.
Thanks, Erin. No, I think you did a great job of sharing our approach of remote learning in terms of providing that recorded content. Now, that's not saying that teachers do not have the opportunity, or we're not asking them to connect with kids in a way that makes sense and is meaningful for their age level and their family. And they're doing that through a variety of platforms and opportunities to do that. But I do agree with whoever wrote the question that we do need to have instruction provided for our students. It's our goal that students can remotely access their teacher, or maybe a teacher in another building, to get instruction. Sometimes it may be an online learning platform that we have, like our math coach, that's for our elementary math program, but provide that instruction and then allow opportunities for students to practice, submit that center square and a couple adjoining squares, and get some feedback on that center square. So this is something, and I know there's a question later on about where are we going for next school year with these restrictions. This is something that we'll continue to expand upon and look at. But the idea being, as I've talked about a lot in these conversations, is we have to look beyond our own home situation and our own workflow for how things enact for us to how it works for everybody. So I know we've heard from parents of, hey, my spouse is, as working at home, and we only have enough bandwidth, so we can't get online and do a lot of work until my spouse is offline, or the devices, or just how it works in the family schedule. So we wanted to be at any time of day or night that kids can learn, kids can get on, you can access when it's convenient to your schedule. I hope we can all understand that for providing true instruction to say all kids in fourth grade need to get on at 9 o'clock to get their math lesson, and that's the only opportunity, we're also going to miss a lot of kids in that experience if we're not recording it. What I am saying is we do need to have those touch points, even that social emotional component of, I want to see my teacher, I want to talk to him or her and have that engagement. Those are things that we need to continue to evolve and enact moving forward. The other question on this slide I'll take, which is number 3, which is there any discussion or decision about shortening the current 2019-20 school year, or is the last day of school remaining May 29th? So the last day of school is going to remain May 29th. Per the state, we have, first of all, the state has issued guidance that districts should stay with their originally scheduled academic calendar. And then secondly, there are minimum hours that we need to meet. And based on how things work, some grade levels, we have a lot of extra hours that we go to school that could be used for closures of normal snow days or extended closures like this. But there are areas like preschool and half-day kindergarten that they just have, they don't have a lot of wiggle room built in. So we are going to continue to have school through May 29th. However, the last part of the question is, will Strongsville City Schools be providing assignments and requesting feedback all the way through May 29th? So we're still finalizing what the last week, it's not going to look as like every other week has looked. We're still finalizing that. We'll probably have a communication out next week, but please know it is going to be a lighter week. If you look at a traditional last week of school, there's all sorts of different events that are going on. It's not the most rigorous academic week that we have. So we are going to change it up a little bit. It'll be opportunities for families to engage if you would like to. Right now, we're not looking for things to be required to be submitted. May 22nd would be the last requirement for there, but want to still provide and stay true to our academic calendar. So more specifics, but hopefully that gives you a big picture overview of maybe how you're planning your family and what would need to be there that last 4-day week of school, which would be more fun, wrap up, culminating activities that you could use that week, or you can use throughout the summer like Erin talked about earlier. So with that, we're going to go to the next slide, which is focused on student services. So I'm going to ask Andy Trujillo, our Director of Student Services, to come online. And Andy, if you want to take questions 6, 9, and 10 are yours.
Great. So an update on special education is number 6. First, I'd just like to say that thank you to all our parents out there who are working hard. It's really heartfelt for me because I know that you, as a parent of a student with a disability, this is hard on everyone, yet you have a very unique challenge, and I do understand that. Our teachers are working very hard. I meet with the teachers on a regular basis, and they're working hard to provide recordings, live sessions, adapted materials. They are reaching out to parents and students to find out what's working and what's not working, and making every effort to make sure that we are connecting as best to our ability to support all of our students. Recently this week, the elementary intervention specialists, special education staff got together and collaborated on ways to adapt the tic-tac-toe boards. And so there's just a collaborative effort being made among all of them to share their ideas across the district. So when parents or students come across obstacles, there's a go-to resource for them. So if you are struggling in that area, or your child is struggling in that area, please reach out, because we do have the resources to help support you at home. I am participating in regular legal seminars remotely to stay up to speed on what's going on. And there aren't a lot of great answers yet, but things change quickly. We do expect possibly in the next week to get some guidance from Ohio about recovery services. I know that's been some concern recently about, hey, what does this look like when we come back? And it's not a legal term, but Ohio is looking to coin a phrase called recovery services, where, you know, what's it going to look like when we come back and maybe we didn't get everything we needed the way we thought we could. And hopefully there's going to be some guidelines for that moving forward. And if you have any more questions or need support, feel free to reach out to me. Number 9, will you be able to give any kind of in-person support to students on the autism spectrum? That is a maybe, in terms of right now we are offering many of our students telehealth. So if a student is really struggling with telehealth or showing regression, showing the inability to really connect at all, it is possible that we could provide some in-person now through our contracted agency to provide some ABA services to some of our students. If you think that that is a need that sounds like it fits what you need right now, you should reach out to me or your special education teacher or coordinator, so we can follow up with you to see if you are a candidate for in-person support. Number 10 is, what does this mean for ESY? When will we know if it is still going on? So Dr. Ryba, did send out on my guidance on ESY to all parents on Sunday. And what that said is we will have ESY. We're just not sure really what it's going to look like yet, in terms of, is it going to be business as usual? Probably not. Is it going to be at one of our schools with social distancing? Is it going to be a hybrid of some kids come to the school, some kids get it remotely, or is it going to be strictly remotely? I can tell you that I was on a meeting a couple of days ago with about 200 directors, and right now a lot of folks are just deciding to plan ESY remotely, and we'll make that decision very soon as the governor rolls out his plans for the state. We are having ESY meetings right now as we speak, and we are right now determining eligibility, whether or not your student, would qualify for extended school year services, but not really getting into the weeds of where and what that looks like at this point in time. Okay. Thank you.
Andy, before you jump off, if you can come back on.
Yeah.
One of the things you mentioned in that update you sent out was about, as a parent, and I apologize if I missed it, about dates and meetings, and how does that work for the IEP?
Yeah, so section 4 of the IEP is ESY, and it gives typically, if the IEP team the last time they met did not determine eligibility, it gives a date for when you would meet by. And so that's when intervention specialists are contacting parents to make sure that that meeting happens before that date. And if you're not sure what that date is, or you're concerned about that at all, you should definitely contact your child's special education teacher.
Thanks, Andy, for that additional clarification and that update. Next up, Aaron's going to come back online and answer the remaining 2 questions on the slide for us. Aaron?
Sure. So early entrance kindergarten, what's happening with the timeline for that? And just as a quick update, anyone that's not going to be of age probably has already contacted our office. We initially had meetings set up, or initial meetings for May, and then we bumped them to June, and we are now scheduling into July. So we just keep pushing the timeline back in hopes that the governor has lifted or released some of the stipulations that are on us. The only way we can do these is in a one-on-one setting with the child and the psychologist. So we're trying to be the most responsive that we can, responsible in how we're doing this, to not put anyone's safety at risk. So we will continue to talk with the families, communicate with the families, figure out a way that we can do this in the safest way. So as of now, they're going to be scheduled for July, and we will keep in touch for that one. Question 8 is asking about summer school, and especially if it'll be more readily available for our at-risk students, or if they're not at a Title I school. Typically, what we do is we invite all students in 2nd and 3rd grade that are on a RIMP. However, in this situation, we run the school in June. At this time, again, to stay with the mandate and the orders, we are not planning to run the in-person summer school sessions for elementary in June. We don't know what it'll look like beyond June, or what anything will look like. So at this time, we're just saying, we don't have plans to do summer school at this point. What I would recommend and continue to recommend are some of the things that I talked about earlier. The Lexia is a phenomenal reading program. And they, of course, say the number one thing you can do with kids to keep them engaged and keep them from sliding in the summer is reading. So I can offer that support. And then if you check out the webpage, like I talked about, it'll be up in a few weeks. If anything changes with that, we will definitely reach out to the families that would be involved with that to see if there's any future consideration of elementary summer school.
Thank you, Aaron. Moving on to the next set of questions, we've got a question for technology that our Director of Instructional Technology, Dave Binkley, is going to take for us. So, Dave?
So for number 11, we have, should we hold onto our borrowed Chromebooks throughout the summer break or indefinitely, or will the borrowed Chromebooks be returned as school is out for the year? Right now, we are planning to collect back the Chromebooks at the end of this academic year. That will provide us time to make sure that all devices are in working order. If there's any components that need fixed or repaired. Also helps us make sure that we have the correct number in supply for our classes to begin in August, no matter what kind of in-person or blended environment that we're going to be at.
Thank you, Dave. So more details will be coming as to when that pickup will occur, and we'll be sharing that with everybody accordingly. Next, we've got Steve Breckner, our operations manager, who's going to join us, and Steve's going to talk through the rest of these questions here, which deal with building access, turning materials in. So, Steve.
Okay. Now that the governor's given us some clear directives as far as the school year is concerned, and also some directives in reopening some of the aspects of our everyday life, we've come up with a plan to have students and parents come into the buildings and get the possessions that they have in the classrooms. And I know Dr. Ibe is going to be going through the slides. I know these slides will be shared with you, building specifically with the building shared with you through the principals, emails and bulletins, and then further communication as the dates are coming closer for this plan to be implemented. The overall plan is that we're going to have days for the teachers to come back, teachers alone, and staff to come back and go through their classrooms, go through the students' desks, and put all of the items into bags, label those bags, and then those bags will be placed into the hallway prior to the assigned student parent pickup time. So as you see these slides, what we've done is we took every grade level and said how many students are in those grade levels. We divided that into 25%. So we're going to be well underneath what the state guideline is as far as the ability of how many people in one place. So there are designated times. For example, if you're a kindergartner at Chapman Elementary, Wednesday, May 13th, you could come get your items. The buildings will be open to you from 8:30 to 10 in the morning. We're giving out these dates far in advance so that we're hopeful that families can make the accommodations to come in at those times. The common thread is that from Wednesday, May 13th, Thursday, May 14th, Friday, May 15th, that the elementary schools will be open at those designated times for students with those last names in those grades to come in. We will have it designated a specific door that you're to come into, and that those kind of details will be shared with you as the dates come closer. Maps will be shared with you as the dates come closer. But you will enter at a specific door. A route will be indicated for you once you get into the school. You'll go through, you'll grab the bag with the possessions. At that point, there will be a station set up in some fashion, whether it's a book drop off or if somebody's actually in charge of that station is yet to be seen with the individual principals. But at that point, any library books that are out will be able to be collected. I will also be instructing the custodial staff to put out any items out of lost and found that can be displayed. So as people are going through, you can see what items are in the lost and found and get those items. At that point, then once those items are retrieved, you'll exit the building. As you can see on the side, and again, these slides will be individually shared with everyone through other communications. This is just an overview today. There are some things that we're expecting to have happen as we open these buildings. Of course, the first and foremost is we're concerned about the students' health and safety. We need to maintain this idea that, of course, is now more prevalent than ever of social distancing. We will have the sidewalks marked with chalk every 6 feet. We'll have that striped out. That's where you're to line up. If the marks are already filled and you're here for your designated time, our plan is to get people in and out as quickly as possible with this process. If the lines are filled up, though, please just remain in your car. Please don't crowd the lines. Please don't think that we're not going to be able to accommodate if we're running a few minutes behind. We have time built into the schedule to allow for some flexibility. If you have students that are in more than, you have children that are in different grade levels, I would encourage you to contact the building principal and make sure that all of those bags for your children, which time works best for you to come into the building. We can accommodate then all of those bags being in one place. What we will not allow is if you're here and the kindergarten pathway is one way, and yet you also have a student in 4th grade and that pathway is completely different, we're not going to let people deviate from the assigned pathways. So please, communication with your principals is important so you don't have to come back to the school multiple times. And that way we can all maintain social distancing in that way as well. We are putting a limit of 15 minutes in the building. That we do not anticipate anybody would need to be in the building more than 15 minutes. But that is a kind of it's a standard that we want to maintain to get people in and out of the building as fast as possible. We are going to be having limits on how many people can be in the building for each grade. There will be people at the door letting people in, and there will be a pathway then and another way to get out of the building. Once people leave, we'll let more people in. We're going to be very strict and very controlled on how many people are allowed into the building at one time for both these grade levels. These pathways will not intersect. The buildings are going to be, I don't want to say barricaded and to make it sound more permanent than it is, but there will be areas that you just will not, there's going to be a physical barrier there or visual barrier that you cannot cross from one part of the building to the other. We're trying again to streamline this as much as possible. You go in, you get your bag, drop off your library book. If there's anything from the lost and found that you see, you grab that, and then you would be out of the building. The other thing that I want to mention is the bathrooms will be closed. There will be no bathroom use. Drinking fountains will be covered. No one will be using the drinking fountains. It is just too likely that someone could not practice good social distancing in those areas, or something could happen. And exactly what we're trying to avoid by doing all this in a very slow, methodical way, somebody has the virus and it spreads. So we're not going to let people go to the restrooms while they're here. We're not going to let people use the drinking fountains here. And you're going to be using specific doors, specific areas, and all of that will be shared with you in further communication. It's our hope that as we communicate this to you, you can email principals if there's extenuating circumstances, because sometimes that does happen. I want to encourage you to understand, I want to have everyone understand the custodians will be back in the building. These are designated times for the majority of students to get their things out of the schools. If there's extenuating circumstances and this will not accommodate, there will be the ability to contact the principal, contact the head custodian. If there's an item that needs to be retrieved, they can go to the classroom, they can see if the item's there, and then arrange a time for those things to be dropped off at the curb. We will not be allowing, it is our practice that we're going to be doing here. We're not going to be allowing parents and students to come into the building and go other than these directed pathways. And once this is done, there may be some exceptions, but I'm not able to think of any right now, where we would allow parents and students back into the buildings. After this is done, staff will be coming back and clearing everything out for the summer. And then custodians will begin tearing apart the classrooms and begin their summer cleaning. So please, as you get this communication, make sure you're communicating with the principals. Any concerns that you have, anything that they're not able to address, they'll forward to me. But I think we have a good plan in place of getting students and parents as safely and quickly as possible through the buildings. One last item. I know many people have multiple children. I know that there's a lot of responsibilities associated with that. However, I want to encourage you, if you do need to bring your child to this, I want to limit the amount of people that are in these buildings. So if you come with four children or 3 children, that's going to be 3 people in the building, and that's going to slow up how many people can be in there at that time and possibly slow up the line. So I would encourage everyone, if it's just you're able to go in and get the items and leave, that would be very appreciated. If you need to bring your child that's the student in the school, that is fine. But we really want to avoid all large families coming in at the same time and then slowing up this process of retrieving those items. Thank you.
Thank you, Steve. Lots of great information. And as Steve shared with everybody, because there was so much information, that this will be shared via your principal's newsletters. So please make sure you're checking out the emails that you're getting. And as also, just to reiterate, library books, lost and found, all can be addressed during the days when you're coming to visit at this time or pick up your items at this time. So we have a few more one more slide of questions before we turn it over to Aaron and get some questions that you guys have submitted live. Number 16 is one that I will take. Is the whole academic calendar for next year being reconsidered in anticipation of the second virus wave that is supposed to hit in the winter? So in terms of, I'm not going to address specifically about second waves because that's outside of my area of expertise. But what we are planning is how are we going to address possible restrictions that will be in place come August, September of next year. So the short answer to the question is everything is on the table. We have a start date of mid-August. Could that start date be moved to another time? Yes, it's going to depend on what the world looks like at that time. I did want to share with everybody that we are starting to work on how school will work, how it would look, how we're going to deal with so many different aspects of our organization. And we're building the system to start to address these questions that we have. However, we're kind of in a holding pattern right now because the Ohio Department of Health and the Ohio Department of Education are currently meeting to define and give guidance to school districts about their best estimate as to what restrictions will be in place as we get to August and September of next school year. So what we're doing internally is we're developing work groups that will develop recommendations on schooling, and those recommendations will be filtered up to an oversight committee. So as you take a look at an overall school organization, it's not just as simple as, hey, if we have 6-foot social distancing requirements, if we have, max amount of kids in a classroom, how are we going to deal with that in the elementary classroom? It's bigger than that. We need a transportation work group to say, how does this make sense? And how do we work busing students? How do we feed students and have cafeteria procedures that meet these guidelines? What are we going to do with recess? And does recess even exist in this setting with social distancing? And how are we going to deal with maybe not so much at the elementary level, but at the older level, larger ensemble groups that are going to have more kids they have more kids in one setting to work. So we will be sharing that. There will be opportunities for parent involvement and parent input on that. But we're building the system right now to answer those questions and access the folks that have expertise in those areas as to how are we going to develop a organizational structure that could meet the possible recommendations that may be there or that we know are currently in there based on the governor's update to how warehouses or retail or office spaces have to work now until the foreseeable future. So more to come on that, but we do have a process in place to start identifying that. And in terms of the specific, concern about different waves coming through, the system that we have to build has to be able to adjust and adapt to a variety of settings, meaning maybe we start off in a hybrid approach, then we come back for a little bit, and then guidance changes to where we need to go back to a hybrid approach. So the idea and the conceptual development of it would be is we just need to implement this system whenever it needs to be implemented, and it's not contingent about a time or place. So that's the work that we're doing, and there's definitely going to be a lot more to come. That's work we're going to start in the final weeks of school with our staff while they're here. And then for those of us that work throughout the summer, this is going to be a big focus of our efforts throughout the summer months. With that, Aaron's going to come back online and address question 17. Aaron?
Okay. 17 dovetails nicely with what Dr. Ryba was just speaking of. And it's about the fall 2020 curriculum. Are we going to adjust that to account for the fact that we have been doing the remote learning? Many may have not been as successful as traditional in-classroom learning, as the question states. So yes, absolutely. We do need to take into account that, for multiple weeks, we have not had a traditional classroom environment of 7 hours a day, nor should we. So we can't replicate that experience. We will have to absolutely look next year with the incoming students. Where are their holes? Where are their gaps? And how do we fill those before we move on to new content? Because so much of it is critical to build upon. So, again, depending on where we end up and how schooling looks and how everything is in the fall, we will make sure to guide our teachers in that direction so they can pre-assess and they can talk with the previous grade teachers and find out exactly what does need covered to ensure that our students do have a successful year.
Thank you, Aaron. We have a couple questions now in terms of finances. So we're going to ask our district treasurer, George Anagnostou, to come online and share his feedback on these questions.
Thank you, Dr. Ryba. The first question, number 18, will there be a partial refund for all-day kindergarten fees due to the fact that children weren't in school for over 2 months? We took the full-day kindergarten tuition reimbursement into consideration and we'll be making a recommendation to the Board of Education at the May 7th Board of Education meeting. Legally, the Board of Education is the governing body that will ultimately give us the authority to do so if they agree with our recommendation. And then question 19, will the money on school lunch accounts roll over and be available in the fall? Yes, this actually happens every year where there's money left on a student's lunch account, and that money does get rolled over into the next school year.
Thank you, George. And the last question that we have before we bring Dan on, our communications coordinator, I want to let everybody know that we understand at all levels, we have important end of the year events that are special to families or special to kids. They're traditions that we look forward to. Obviously, some of those we're not going to be able to recreate, but some of those we are working on opportunities to give that experience however we may be able to do that. So we've assigned liaisons to the different levels to coordinate some of these events, and Dan Faust, our communications coordinator, is the liaison with the middle school. So since it's an elementary question, but geared towards what the middle school is going to do, Dan, if you want to come and give our folks an update on this one.
Sure. Thanks, Dr. Ryba. So the question is there a chance for incoming sixth graders to have an orientation day, such as tour, presentations, activities prior to the start of the next school year? And I can tell you that we've been working with the middle school administrative team to identify the different activities and events that would help our students moving from fifth grade into sixth grade in the differing time that we have right now. How do we make that available and accessible to them? We're going to be working on this project during the summer, and we'll definitely have some sort of orientation package, whether that's a virtual or depending on some of the restrictions that are going to be in place potentially at the beginning of next school year. Maybe it's a live event for a small group of people at a time to make sure that our students are comfortable in moving from fifth to sixth grade and into the middle school. So we are working on those plans and details, and when we have those available, we'll certainly be reaching out and letting our fifth graders and their families know about these opportunities to get them ready for sixth grade.
Thank you, Dan. In terms of the questions that were submitted in the survey and the themes that they've captured, that wraps it up for the submitted questions, but I can see Aaron's coming back online to moderate any live questions that have been submitted throughout our presentation so far. So Aaron?
Okay, so we just have a handful. The first two would be with regards to charges for full-day kindergarten. So the first one, do you anticipate next year's full-day kindergarten to be a less cost or prorated in any way if it's still digital learning or a hybrid program? And then the second one, George addressed, but can you provide an update of what you're presenting to the board with respect to the full-day kindergarten prorated refunds? I know George talked about that, but if you can provide any more clarity to either of those, please.
So the May 7th, I'll answer the first question in terms of are we considering changing the tuition? So as George said, setting tuition for full-day kindergarten is a board decision. One of the things that we'll take a look at is as we get closer and determine what the reality looks like for full-day kindergarten next year, and do we need to make any tuition adjustments? That's something that'll come from George's office and go to the board for their consideration. So at this point, there's been no decision made because we don't know if full-day kindergarten is going to be able to exist in person or if it's going to be remotely. But that will definitely be something that will be considered. And that's a decision that would require the approval of the Board of Education. So probably, June, July, somewhere in that time, we'll not only put it on the board agenda, but obviously we'll communicate with our full-day kindergarten parents that have applied to let them know what the cost or the tuition would be for the year. In terms of what's on the agenda, we are going to do another live show. All of our board meetings are live streamed, but again, we'll send out the information for our community and parents to get online and see. It's going to be an agenda that is filled with adjustments that the board needs to make and approve, from board policy to fees, based on the extended closure. So in terms of, I'm not ready to share specifically what that recommendation is, because the board will get that recommendation this Friday as a first draft of the agenda. So I want them to be able to see it first. But what we have looked at is looking at what percentage of time or what days do we feel that there may need to be some adjustment. How does that percentage of a time equate to a dollar figure? And how would that relate to a possible refund? So we are recommending that there be a refund to a portion of the dollars for the full day kindergarten, but the metrics that we used and the total amount that equates to, we'll be publicly sharing that next week at the board meeting.
Okay, two on the distance learning here. The first one I can take, and then Dr. Ryba, if you want to add to it. So it says that as an Aaron mentioned that we want the learning to be the same for all kids, which is why we're not doing the live sessions. This person agrees with that. However, some teachers in other buildings are doing more than others with live sessions. They're providing live lessons daily or multiple times a week. How does this make the learning the same for all kids in the district? And so I did reach out as we were having this conversation, just to confirm with all of the principals, and I did get confirmation. But what we have always communicated and continue to communicate is teachers can have Hangouts, they can do a Google Meet, and what they do is they provide support. They can do some teaching, but we have always said that cannot be the only way in which new instruction is presented. So that has been made very clear. All of the principals confirmed with me that anything that's being done live is support. It's never the only way for new instruction. They may have some check-ins so the kids can see each other in the class. They're doing a lot of creative things in some circumstances. However, again, no new instruction is being provided in that manner. Everything new is via the recorded lessons that are given on the tic-tac-toe boards. And I would suggest, and then I'll turn it over to Dr. Ryba, but if you do have further concerns, maybe reach out to the building principal and see if something, if there's something missing or something else that needs to happen. But I do want to confirm that, we are all abiding by that with no new instruction being provided, the only methodology via these live meets. Anything else to add to that, Dr. Ryba?
No, I think you covered it well.
Okay. The other question, or is a recommendation, is it possible to run a social skills group on Zoom or on our Hangouts? This is one of our goals, a big area of struggle for her students. They're concerned about that with social distancing. It would be great if a weekly group could be set up with an IS or a speech therapist, so a few kids working on this, or with typical kids to be positive examples.
So I see Andy jumped on. So Andy, you want to take first part of that question?
Absolutely. So this is definitely a possibility through Google Meet. We do have intervention specialists and speech therapists that, if they deem it appropriate and could be conducive to the students' learning, they do get select folks involved and provide a social skills group. So if you think this is beneficial to your child and it has not yet been offered, I suggest that you would reach out to the case manager or speech therapist or whoever would be appropriate, or even myself if you'd like me to be a conduit in that communication. Okay.
Thanks, Andy. And if your child is not a student that may be receiving special education services, we do have phenomenal guidance counselors at the elementary level. They are holding office hours. If you go on our remote learning page, you can sign up for a time slot to talk with one of our counselors. And, again, you can reach out to them. And if we see themes that, hey, we need to do some social connecting with some of our students and the parents are agreeable, that's an opportunity that I know they would welcome and they would definitely facilitate. And so, as I've said in a lot of my communications, this feedback is great. Send it to the principal. send it to the teacher or the guidance counselor, because what we want to start to see is there is obviously going to be isolated preferences. But we want to start to see themes, and then on those themes, we can continue to build and evolve our remote learning plan. So reach out to the guidance counselor, reach out to the case manager or speech language pathologist or intervention specialist, and one of those groups that's applicable can help facilitate that. And just going back to the question that Aaron answered earlier, that's one thing that, as we look at, is this going to be extended? And we talked to our teachers earlier today, is to, at the elementary level in particular, how do you provide opportunities to have that social connection with your class? Or, a child can see your teacher, you could see your kids in your classroom. It's not new instruction. You may answer questions or you may provide some additional support, but just the saying hi and what's going on and what do you do, and those things are important too. And obviously, in any large group of people, we have folks that are really comfortable with that and we're ready to go right outside of the gate. And we have folks that are learning and stretching themselves and learning new technology to do that. And it just may be a little bit longer in terms of a comfort area for them to get up and running. But that is, as I take a look at big picture, where do we need to enhance our remote learning? It's that opportunity. Yes, we need to provide that recorded instruction so everybody has equal access to that. But how do we provide those meaningful check-ins with our kids just to keep that relationship, that classroom community going? That's something that we're working to evolve across the district.
Okay, I have one that I can answer quickly. Will students have access to Lexia all summer? And yes, just in case you missed that part, they will have all of their district platforms. So if you have any problems getting into those, let me know. I work all summer and we'll get you hooked up there. Can the counselors record a session of what would have been done in the 4th, 5th grade classrooms? I'd love to have my kids watch and experience that. So I think that means, the counseling sessions that were taking place in the classrooms.
So we actually have a meeting with all of the counseling department tomorrow in different groups. So definitely can throw that out as a suggestion to see what's available. So I can't give a definitive answer as I'm not sure exactly what was to happen in the remaining months of the school year for the guidance lessons. And we have classroom guidance lessons in all grade levels. So we'll definitely talk to them, share with them that feedback and see what they can come up with.
Okay, the last question I see here is questioning why we were late to the game when it came to educating during the first quarantine, stating several other schools took immediate action and we did not.
So I've answered this question multiple times, but it was a choice. I made a choice in collaboration with our board and our other administrators on what we felt was in the best interest of all of our kids and families. So we were not late to the game because we weren't prepared. We decided strategically to not start remote learning until April 6th. So if you look at a lot of the districts that had things up and going and ready to go, one of the things that I noticed is where was their spring break located? If I had 3 weeks before I got to spring break, then absolutely, I'm going to work quickly to get everything up and going because a lot of those school districts already called that, hey, we're not going to come back in that few days before we went on our spring break. We're going to be out to mid-April. So they had a plan accordingly. If you remember our schedule, the first day that we were off was a pickup day and organization day and everybody getting their stuff. So obviously there's going to be no academics there. If we would then come in and have teachers start planning and starting remote lessons, it's going to take some time to get that built. And then the very next week we had spring break. And then we came back for a week. So the decision that I made was that we needed to give our families a chance to adjust and adapt and learn what life was going to be like. And the idea of putting pressure on families that you need to manage assignments and get them done and completed and submit them, and would this count for a grade or wouldn't count for a grade? Why put that pressure on students and families when in the big picture, in the grand scheme of things, our students will be okay. And our students will get the educational experiences the best that they can in a remote setting. So we allowed that acclimation period during those 5 days. We took spring break. And prior to spring break, we set a plan together with our staff about what remote learning was going to look like. And we used that week after spring break, when parents were available, staff was available, to start communicating what our plan was, so everybody felt as comfortable as they could be prior to actually starting remote learning. So if you remember, the first community conversations we did was the Thursday before we started remote learning. So it was a strategic decision. It's a decision that I believe is in the best interest of our community as a whole. And we were able to implement the rest of the remote learning plan moving forward. And I hope that we all still understand that even though we have remote learning up and going, every family is experiencing this in different ways. There's some, as we talked about earlier, some that think we should do more, some that we're just right, and some that are hoping that I would say that the school year will be over this Friday because they're overwhelmed and trying to manage life in addition to school. So we're trying to find that happy ground with where we're at as a school district. But again, we weren't late to any party. It was a strategic decision that we thought systematically got us up and running in a way that met the needs of our kids, our community, our parents, and our staff.
Thank you. That completes the submitted questions for us today.
Well, thank you, Aaron, for sharing that. Thanks for everybody, all of our families, for joining us. As I hope we know by now, is that once the video is finalized, it will stay housed on our website. So if you have anybody else in the household that wants to check out what we talked about today, it's there. And if you have any questions or further feedback, I know it didn't come out, I don't believe it was asked specifically, but at the elementary and preschool level, besides some of the suggestions that were brought, can we bump up the release of the tic-tac-toe boards, other things like that, you can expect that things are going to run in a similar fashion as they have. There may be some tweaks and enhancements, but there's not going to be a major pivot or shift in terms of how we're providing instruction to our preschool and elementary students for the rest of the school year. But I greatly appreciate all of the questions, all of the feedback, and the support that you're giving at home. We truly understand and try to balance that, all that you have to deal with and the work that you now have to do to support and guide, depending on your child's age, through this remote learning. And I've seen so many emails and communications of the phenomenal work that you're doing as partners in education for your kids. And I just want to let you know that your kids are going to be okay. They are the educational differences that they may have had in this year. Whenever we get them back, whatever setting we have, whatever time frame, we will close those gaps, and we will do all that we can to make sure we're always doing what's in the best interest of our kids. But please, we don't have every aspect of this solidified or finalized, and we're still evolving as we go, as all districts are. And that's why I say in every email, we want to look at themes and get that feedback. So please reach out to your building principal. Please reach out to teachers if you have needs that we can continue to enhance and support you in the work that we're doing remotely. So again, on behalf of the board and the entire district, we're thinking about you. We miss you guys here. And we hope that you and your family are taking care of one another and yourself and are safe and healthy. And until next time, we'll speak with you hopefully in the near future. We hope that you continue to do well. Take care, everyone.